So we've encountered a situation in which this is not what we expected it to be. We're inside this object. We're inside a method of this object. But this is not the object. So first things first, let's figure out what this is at this point. It's not what we expect, so let's find out what it is. So I'm going to throw a debugger in here. And that way when we reach this line of code while executing, it'll stop and let us have a look. So let's refresh the page. Submit the form. Here we are. So it gives us some context over here. So does that do what I think? Yeah, good. Okay, so inside this function, we have some variables. Here's this. Aha. You see that? This is the form. Why is this the form? Where are we? That's right. It was the target for the event. And inside an event handler, this is bound to the object on which the event fired, the target of the event. Just because it's a method doesn't mean that that behavior changes. It doesn't matter that this function was defined as a method of an object. What matters is how the function got called, how it was invoked. So when an object method gets invoked by using the dot syntax with parentheses, object dot whatever parens, that, the way that we called the function, is what binds this to the object. It's not where it's defined, it's how it's called. Now, we didn't manually call handle submit. Handle submit was called from an event listener, right? We added an event listener and said, this is the function I want you to call. And since it did the calling, that's what determined how this gets bound. And any time that that's how it gets called, this gets bound to the event's target. We don't have a better way to get to the object, so we want to change that default behavior. We have a few ways of doing so. We lost Apple TV. All right, I just did it. Yeah.
Does that mean then that this changes what it's bound to every single time? Or
Every time you're inside a different function, yeah, it's gonna change. Now we have some ways of impacting what it gets set to, though. So when we add the event listener, we just pass in that function as an argument, right? Notice we do not put open close parens here, right? If we did that, we wouldn't be setting that function as the event listener. We would be setting the return value of that function as the event listener. If you put an expression inside parens, it's going to execute that expression, and that's going to be what it passes in as the argument, right? So it would actually run handle submit right here on line 4, not waiting for the submit to happen. It would run it right then, and then whatever it happens to return would get set as the event listener. And I don't think we have a return statement inside handle submit, so that would just be undefined. So we don't put the parens there. We actually put handle submit as an object. So when you have a function as an object, you can call a method on that called bind. All functions have a method called bind. And the first argument you pass to bind is what will get bound as this. So if we want it to be whatever this is right here on line 4, we could do this. Bind this. That's one way we could fix the this problem. Let's see if that's true. Get past our debugger. Refresh the page. Hit go. I thought I got rid of that. I did. I did remove the breakpoint. It's not there. Refresh this one more time here. There is no breakpoint. What are you doing? It's pausing on line. Oh, I think I accidentally added one in the actual in the browser. I added one by clicking on the gutter here. You can add a breakpoint. Okay. So anyway, now I have an error on line 50. Render list is not defined. Didn't have a problem with render color, but I seem to have a problem with render list, right? Because I didn't actually add this dot. So let's do that. Refresh again, submit again. Another error, render list item is not defined on line 32. Okay, so I think we got all the way through handle submit without a problem. Yay, we're up to render list. So we just need to maybe change this dot here. Render list item. Let's try that. This dot render list item is not a function either, line 32. What's going on? This line 32, what function am I in right now? That one. Oh. Say that again, Dave? We're not in render list. We're in this function right here. A new function, a new possible value for this. Fun, fun, fun. Here, I'll just so I added this dot render list here, this dot render color here, and 46 and 50. Okay. Not hard to fix. A couple ways we could do it. We could use the same trick. So here's the function. So at the end of the function definition, I could just put bind this. I don't like this solution, but it would fix it. But it's hard to even see that we did this because of all the curly braces and everything. So that would do it, but I don't like it. We're using ES6, and we can use arrow functions. So for all we know so far, arrow functions just provide an alternate syntax, but they actually don't behave quite the same way. So if instead of writing this anonymous function with the keyword function, if we instead got rid of that and stuck an arrow in. So same thing, right? This is just a function. Argument list followed by the arrow equal greater than. besides being a somewhat shorter syntax, the difference in how arrow function behaves is that it automatically binds this to whatever this was in its surrounding context. So arrow functions automatically bind this to whatever this is at that point. Which is arguably what the default behavior should have been all along, but it wasn't. So rather than change the default behavior, there's an awful lot of JavaScript code already out there. It really, really needs to remain backwards compatible, so they introduce a whole new syntax for it. So arrow functions automatically bind this the way you usually expect it to. So let's try that. The error was render list items not a function on line 32. Okay, that error went away, and it did the thing. Now, I didn't type anything in the form, so we can't see if it's quite right. But let's do it. Who haven't I bothered yet? Maniz, I haven't really bothered you. I asked you to do a thing, but I didn't. Actually calling you. What's your favorite color? Royal blue? All right, let's see if we can find. It's kind of. That looks pretty. Yeah, it's a little too purple. Okay, that looks pretty dang royal to me. It's as royal as you're going to get right now. Sorry. Age, I don't know. 786. Go. Yay! We fixed it. Go us. Let's commit before we break it again. So what we've done since our last commit, the last time it wasn't broken, is that we wrapped everything in an object. An object with methods. All right. So when this isn't what you expect, you can call bind on that if you're in a place where where that's convenient to do, which wasn't too bad in the case of this event handler. Or you can use an arrow function. Let me ask you this. Suppose I want to change what this is in append child. Can I do this? If the answer were yes, I probably wouldn't have asked, right? So why can't I do that? What am I calling bind on? What name we? So we're not calling bind on append child. That would look like this. What's the thing before the dot? It's not append child. It's the result of calling append child, right? We got the parentheses there. We're actually invoking append child. So whatever the return value of append child is, that's what we're calling bind on. So that's not going to work. So when you have arguments, it complicates your situation with bind. There's something you can do about it, but we're not going to go there yet. Just wanted to point out that if I stuck bind here, the thing on the left is not actually append child, it's the return value of append child. Up here, it was actually handle submit itself. Because we weren't calling handle submit, we were just passing handle submit as an argument to another function, setting it as an event listener. So instead of passing handle submit to add event listener, we're binding handle submit to this, and then passing that, the result of calling bind, to add event listener. And the return value of bind is the same function, but with the binding changed. A little bit of magic. All right, and that is People Factory.